Everyone, okay, welcome to the Hordes watching. Just worth mentioning we have got press and media in the room, as well as I'm sure people watching online. Can we just start with agenda item? Thank you very much. Increase the viewer figures. Item number one, which is just welcome and apologies, and I think we do have a couple of apologies, albeit substitutes.
Yep, we do. We have Councillor Steve Horton is being substituted by Councillor Caroline Makinson, and also we have apologies from Kate Josephs, who is being substituted by Philip Gregory.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, on to agenda item number two in that case, which is just some announcements, and I wanted to start my announcements today by just briefly mentioning the tragic incident that we saw at All Saints School in Sheffield last week, when a young boy died. Look, what I think the events of last week show is the horrific consequences of what knife crime can do to our communities, and indeed is doing to our communities, and lives across, not just South Yorkshire, clearly, right across this country are being shattered by knife crime, and I think we would all agree that enough is enough. I saw that clearly there was a significant march in Sheffield on Saturday in support of Harvey's family, but also in support of the idea that we want people to drop the knife, and any incident of knife crime is one incident too many. So clearly, personally as Mayor, obviously I think alongside leaders, community leaders, everybody in South Yorkshire, frankly, we stand firmly in support of Harvey's family, the All Saints school community, families who I know will be scared across South Yorkshire. I am, as Mayor with responsibility now for policing and crime, determined to focus on knife crime. Made very clear my hopes for our approach to knife crime to change. Clearly, I think South Yorkshire Police are already doing a load of work, and indeed, in a frankly quite tragic twist of fate, we had the week before Harvey's death announced a knife crime campaign through the VRU with South Yorkshire Police, because clearly we see this as a significant issue. I don't think any of us will resile from that zero tolerance approach to knife crime when it does happen, and continue to work across our communities to support particularly young people who are being affected by knife crime in all sorts of different ways. Those young people who are scared, those young people who feel as though carrying a knife is in some way a good idea, which we all understand it is not, and that's what this has to be a moment to reflect on and remind us all. So our hearts, I know, go out to Harvey's family and the wider community of All Saints School. Other announcements. Police precepts at last week's police and crime panel. I was pleased to see the panel unanimously support my proposal to increase the police precept by £14 for a Band D property, or £9.33 for a Band A property. As people will know, Band A properties make up the majority of properties in South Yorkshire. What that money will do is allow us to invest in South Yorkshire Police over the next 12 months, and that is very welcome. I'm glad that so much support has been shown for that investment, because I think people understand just how important that is for everything from, as we've just talked about, knife crime, through to antisocial behaviour, all the other work we want to do on things like violence against women and girls, neighbourhood policing, etc., etc., etc. So grateful for the support that has come at a cross-party basis for those improvements, and indeed the increases in the precept. Chancellor's growth speech is worth reflecting on, I think, particularly for South Yorkshire. Really pleased that the Chancellor referenced Doncaster Sheffield Airport in her speech so prominently, and offered her support for DSA. Really important, I think, that we now grasp that opportunity of the Chancellor, indeed the government support for Doncaster Sheffield Airport. I've been in touch with her privately. She's obviously come to Doncaster since that announcement and shown her support there. I know it's an item on the agenda today, but good to hear from the Chancellor that she is so supportive of South Yorkshire and our growth ambitions through sustainable aviation. The Mayoral Economic Advisory Council also came to South Yorkshire, and indeed Doncaster, where we talked about investment opportunities, including Doncaster Sheffield Airport, and indeed took a group out to DSA, health and innovation, skills and other opportunities besides. The MIAC is, I think, a really good example of where we're really leading the way. We've got a brilliant bunch of people who have agreed to be part of our Mayoral Economic Advisory Council and are helping us on our thinking and challenging us about how we do our growth work, and that is a good thing. And so really pleased that they were able to come to Doncaster and see some of the brilliant work that's going on there, as they have done in other parts of South Yorkshire, and will be in Sheffield later this year, which is a really welcome visit. Dogs on trams consultation, the highest profile issue, I realise. Dogs on trams is an issue that I'm contacted about regularly. I know people are able to take dogs on buses, they're able to take dogs on the train. The egregious example of them not being able to take dogs on trams is something that are wrong we must right. And we're now doing a consultation asking people to offer their views, if they think that is right or otherwise. So keen for people who are listening to this to have their say on dogs on trams. And let us know how they feel about that. I think currently only assistant dogs and dogs in cages are allowed on trams, and that is something that we want to look at again. You could say it's barking mad that they are not currently allowed. Sorry, it's the only one I was allowed. That they're not allowed on trams. So we're having that consultation at the moment. Consultation closes on the 3rd of March. So I'd encourage everyone to get involved and have your say. I'm sorry, I can't read that pun out. That's just too terrible even for me, so I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3 is urgent items. Does anybody have any urgent items? No? In which case on to agenda item number 4, which is items to be considered in the absence of public and press. I think we've just heard a little bit about that before the meeting, but members are asked to resolve that in accordance with paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of agenda item 10, appendix 1, on the grounds that it is likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the press and public were present, there would be a disclosure to them of exempt information, and for that reason, the reason set out in the report, that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are members happy that that is the case? Yeah, thank you. In which case on to agenda item number 5, declarations of interest by individual members in relation to any item of business on the agenda. I know we have standing items essentially. Russ, would you like to go?
Item 10.
Thank you very much. In which case, agenda item number 6, reports from and questions by members. None have been received in the advance of the meeting. Does anyone want to surprise me? No, thank you. Number 7, receipt of petitions. None have been received in advance of the meeting. Agenda item number 8 is a public question. We've received a question from Wyman Yao. They are not in attendance today, so the question will be read out.
Thank you, Chair. It is in regard to the airport. It is a six-fold question. Firstly, the stop-go decision will cost a one-off 16.1 million. Is Doncaster bearing that cost? 2, if it is go, who is underwriting the financial risk of the loan? 3, who is bearing the trading risk of Fly Doncaster? 4, if Fly Doncaster fails, is Doncaster's gain share sunk? 5, what happened to the private sector investor, and are there talks with any prospective investor? And 6, does the continued absence of a private sector investor mean the break clause will be activated?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question. The £16.1 million represents the cumulative grant funding from Simca to the City of Doncaster Council, should that £10 million be approved today. City of Doncaster Council will use that funding to enter into transactions and fund costs. There will be no loan finance from CDC to Fly Doncaster at this stage, and City of Doncaster will be incurring costs directly. The decision regarding the gain share funding has not yet been made, as I think people are aware. The funds invested and those for consideration today are outside of the gain share investment programme. Further work is underway aimed at providing reassurance, due diligence required before a decision on gain share funding will be made. Also, clearly in light of the announcements from the government over just the last few days, keen to enter into a conversation with government there too. As outlined in the report, the procurement process has concluded but not returned an operator that could bring with it private investment, so therefore discussions and opportunity for private finance into the future remain ongoing, but in the near term City of Doncaster Council have focused on operational priorities, essentially to try and get the airport open as quickly as possible. Through the funds being made available, City of Doncaster Council have engaged Munich Airports International, which I think we're all really pleased about, who will support the establishment of operations and development of the business over a multi-year period, and I believe they are confident that the passenger and freight forecasts can be delivered. So really pleased to set that record straight. Thank you very much. We've received a second question from Councillor Jane Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Jane Cox can't be with us today, so I'm going to read the question. Can I submit the following question to Oliver Coppard on agenda item 10? Given the decision to delay funding until an independent assessment is completed, what specific metrics or criteria will be used to examine the financial viability of the business case in order to determine a good use of public money? And also, can I submit the following question to Ros Jones on agenda item 10? Given the significant increase in costs from the initial outline business case to over 145 million, what mechanisms are in place to safeguard public investment if the airport does not achieve the projected economic benefits?
Thank you very much. I'll take this question. Thank you. Slightly surprised, I have to admit, to receive that question from Councillor Jane Cox. I was under the understanding she was supportive of reopening the airport, but maybe not. I thought she was. We're saying all projects and programmes that apply for funding are appraised and assessed for value for money using the Treasury Green Book and appraisal guidance. The value for money assessment considers the potential costs, benefits, risks and uncertainties and impacts of the project. A benefit cost ratio, what we call in shorthand a BCR, is calculated for the project wherever possible, but this is just one of the basket of metrics considered in that value for money assessment, as I think people would understand. All the wider monetised and non-monetised impacts and benefits of a project are quantified wherever possible, and non-quantifiable benefits are also assessed qualitatively. Non-monetised costs and disbenefits are also qualitatively assessed. Given the complexity and the risk around this project, further work will be undertaken to consider the commercial viability of the proposal. The detail of this additional commission has not yet been finalised, and we are working at pace to get that finalised. As the report recommends, further independent advice and assurance on the project will be undertaken. The MCA require confidence that identified risks can be appropriately managed in both the shorter and the longer term, which is really a long way of saying essentially we of course are custodians of public money and are determined to make sure that public money is spent well, as people would fully expect. I do seem to remember I think the councillor, but certainly friends of the councillor, saying that no cost was too high for the airport. We have always said that we need to spend money effectively, public money effectively, and are doing the right thing by making sure that that money is appropriately and effectively used, and that's exactly what we intend to keep on doing. So thank you very much. Ros, did you want to come in on that question?
Thank you, and I'll answer the element that's been actually identified for me to answer from Councillor Jane Cox. There are a range of mitigations that have been considered with both this report and previous reports. Our outline business case, full business case and independent assessment are being considered, as per the Subsidy Advice Unit report, which stated, in our view, the assessment demonstrates that the Council has considered other options for reopening the airport and clearly explains the evidence as why a subsidy was the most appropriate option to achieve this outcome.
Thank you, Ros. And thank you for the question. Okay, on to agenda item number 9, minutes of the previous meeting. Are members content that those minutes are an accurate record? Perfect. Okay. Oh, sorry, the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of January will be considered at the meeting on the 18th of March. So there we go. On to agenda item number 10 then, please. South Yorkshire Airport City. Ros, would you like to speak to this agenda item or give it any introduction?
I'm very happy to speak to this item. I believe the actual reopening of South Yorkshire Airport is crucial to the economic advantages South Yorkshire, Doncaster and South Yorkshire can gain, both in the numbers of people employed and also the fantastic BCR rate of return over the long term. This is a medium to long term strategy that will actually bring great benefits to the Doncaster and the whole of South Yorkshire, and therefore I'm delighted to see this coming forward today, and I'm hopeful that my colleagues will support the report in front of them with the funding that helps keep on with the ongoing opening of the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Gareth, could I ask you to lead us through the paper, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So since we last talked to the board, there's clearly been a number of significant developments, some of which have been referenced today. So the procurement exercise is now concluded, albeit it has not returned an operator that could bring with it private investment. To address this, CDC have now stood up a wholly owned subsidiary, Fly Doncaster, and as announced, that subsidiary will partner with Munich International Airport. So that's great news. It returns a credible international airport operator. The Subsidy Advice Unit has now published its report that was broadly positive with some recommendations on how the submission could be improved, and Doncaster colleagues are now working with their legal team on that issue. The FBC has now been received in its full and final form, reflecting changes to the operating model, and that document is now being taken through our independent assurance processes. Finally, as you mentioned, Mayor, on the 29th of January, the Chancellor of the Exchequer committed government to working with local partners to re-establish the airport as a thriving airport. We know that the opportunity remains significant. So GVA of 6.6 billion, benefit cost ratio of 9.1, and 5,000 direct jobs, 6,500 indirect jobs. But we also know that there remains significant risk associated with this project. At its November board, the board commissioned an internally prepared risk report that's appended to this document. That report sets out some of the challenges, particularly around the head risks and the inherent challenges in recapturing market share. These risks, alongside the recent government announcement, means that there's now a requirement to seek further advice, and that advice has been referenced previously in this meeting. The MCA will require confidence that the identified risk can be appropriately managed, and ultimately the successful management of those risks will be critical to the success of the project overall. So balancing the need for this work along with the operational timeline as identified through the business case is now critical. So this report proposes to advance Doncaster £10 million of revenue funding to progress necessary operational activity. That allows necessary activity to continue whilst we undertake further work to support a final decision in the summer. So we're proposing that revenue expenditure is funded from uncommitted Treasury management money to be reimbursed over time from Doncaster's allocation of gain share revenue. So I'm happy to take any questions at that point, Mayor.
Thank you. Obviously happy to have an open discussion with members in public and on the live webcast, but just want to be clear about there might be some commercially sensitive issues that we might just need to steer clear of, so just conscious of that. Does anybody would like to comment on the proposal? I know we've spoken at length about this over the last number of weeks, so conscious of that. Yeah, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a quick comment that we're fully supportive in Barnsley of this. It's a movement, it's a step forward, a positive step to seeing Sheffield Doncaster Airport come to life, and we welcome this report today. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm acutely conscious, you know, as Gareth has mentioned, as we spoke about the opening of the meeting, about Rachel Reeves' recent statement and how that might hopefully change the picture and gather the government support for our airport. Really pleased to hear that. We have a significant amount of work still to do, clearly, to reassure ourselves and clearly some members of the public, but really keen to crack on with that work, and I think this decision today would give us that opportunity to carry on with that work to make sure we're in the best possible place by summer to take a decision. So unless there's any other comments that people would like to make? No? Okay, could I ask then that the board note the progress made in establishing the wholly owned SPV Fly Doncaster and in securing an operator partner. Note the publication of a report by the Subsidy Advice Unit and further work being undertaken by CDC to consider the Subsidy Advice Unit's recommendations. Note the commitment of His Majesty's Government to working with local partners to support creating South Yorkshire Airport City. Agree to commission independent advice and assurance work as outlined at paragraphs 1.22 and 1.23 with the delegation to develop detailed terms of reference to the Chief Exec and Head of Paid Service in consultation with the Mayor. Approve the award to the CDC of a revenue funding of up to £10 million from uncommitted Treasury management resource to support ongoing costs and progression of time-critical reinstatement activity to be reimbursed from future year CDC gain share funding. Note that in the event that government funding is made available to support these costs, this funding will be used in the first instance. To number 7, delegate authority to the Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service in consultation with the Section 73 Officer and Monitoring Officer to agree terms and conditions of funding and approve drawdown of funding by CDC. Are we all agreed? Yes, agreed. Ross, agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Caroline, agreed. Thank you.
Chair,
Okay.
can I just make a
Please do.
statement? And I'd like to thank colleagues at the MCA for their continued support and financial backing today. we can now continue our plans at pace to reopen our airport in spring, hopefully 2026, and look forward to the future outcomes this summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. In which case, on to agenda item number 11, which is decisions and delegated authority report from Martin Swales.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the report that comes to each MCA board, which notes delegated decisions between, in this particular case, 17th of January and the 31st of January. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. In which case, that takes us to the end of the meeting, unless anybody's got any other business. No? In which case, we will see you at next month's meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.